So let's go ahead and get to these Impact TV results that featured NXT's Sol Ruca and Wendy Chu in trios action in the opening contest. So Jordan Grace, Sol Ruca, and Masha Slamovich defeated Wendy Chu, Rosemary, and Tasha Steelz in the opening match. So before we get to the match, I just want to say, they really tried to cram a lot into this episode, and I'm sure it's going to be the next 2 episodes because they took a week off and they did do 2 sets of tapings. So they did enough for 4 episodes, but they're going to cram it into 3. And I thought that was evident in this episode because it felt like they were scrambling to make matches for Bound for Glory that they would have made over the course of 4 weeks or maybe 2 weeks. They tried to get them all made in this episode. And the way that they did it, and I was talking to BQ about this yesterday, I think he has his Impact review already up. So if it feels like he and I are on the same page, it's because we talked. Like we had a phone. Well, we were sending voice messages back and forth yesterday. But they were put in a tough spot. At least the roster was. I do feel like they could have turned around an episode in 24 hours. They chose not to. But yeah, they it just seemed like the build for Bound for Glory was a bit rushed in this episode where they already had the main event set and they really just kind of like in a paint by numbers type of way. And I'll tell you what I mean as we get through the review. In a very lazy way, started making matches throughout the rest of the show. This show was to set the table for the rest of Bound for Glory because we already had the main event set 2 weeks ago. So this show was just setting the rest of the card up, with the exception of the main event, of course, the Monsters Ball match. But we go Jordan Grace, Sol Ruca, and Masha Slamovich defeating Wendy Chu, Rosemary, and Tasha Steelz. At some point, Wendy Chu and Rosemary are going to have to get a win because I really like that act. I think they're going to be a good tag team. And Sol Ruca is going to be a multi-millionaire within the next couple of years. She's that good. She's got the look, charisma. She's working on her skill set. You know, I didn't think that she was that far behind some of the more veteran talent in the ring. But she stood out the most as like your eyes kind of gravitate towards her. So like she just comes across as a major star. I think that WWE has a big time star on their hands with Sol Ruca. She's fantastic. And she's going to be like a WrestleMania headliner within the next couple of years if she stays healthy and if they don't completely botch it. But I thought the match was pretty good, actually. There was a funny part where I can't remember who was on the outside, but somebody got knocked to the outside and they were like hurting, and Tasha Steelz just went over and started twerking in their face. And I had this idea. I was like, it'd be kind of funny because Tasha Steelz just been thrown into this because of some injuries. Tasha Steelz wasn't doing anything, but every time you put her in a situation, she always does a pretty good job. I think it would be funny after this current like run that she's on is over. If she starts if people backstage are like getting into a brawl or getting hurt, male or female, and she just appears in the way of the camera and starts twerking on them. I don't know why. I just thought that would be funny. That is a very WWE minded segment, I know, but I just thought that would be like a funny thing for her to do. Just kind of like appear out of nowhere and start twerking on people. But let's go to the finish here. So Chu tags in a Spooky Chu and puts her boots on each side of Ruca's head for a neck snap. She slaps a front face lock on her and squeezes away as "Let's Go Ruca" chants. Ruca fights her way free and crawls for the tag, but Rosemary tags in, and she and Chu stop her. They go for a double suplex, but Ruca floats over to a double neck breaker of her own. Rosemary turns into a big boot and a back elbow from Ruca in the corner, who follows up with a death-defying soul snatcher for a big crowd pop. That move is fantastic. And she finally makes the much-needed tag. Slamovich and Steelz come in, and Slamovich takes over. Slamovich has it won, but Grace tags in and hits the Juggernaut driver for the win, which Slamovich didn't seem happy. Again, so that is a very paint by numbers. We got 2 baby faces. We're going to make them a tag team, and then one is going to slight the other in a very minimal way, and it's going to cause a rift between them to generate a little bit of heat, competitive heat between the two going into their pay-per-view match. It's lazy. It's what they're doing. It doesn't mean that the match isn't going to be good, but the story going into it as of this point, I think the story gets a little bit better later, right? Because now Mosh is turning into a psycho, but it's turning into a serial killer all of a sudden. But which is what her original gimmick was in TNA. But that to get to that point, it's just like paint by numbers type of, like you've been seeing it for 50 years. And then hold on, let me check. All right. Billy says, do you think Masha was the original plan for Jordan at BFG? I do think that was the original plan. I do. I just think that they just waited till like the road to Bound for Glory was starting to get to that point. She was just hiding out in the tag team division. And that was it. Godzilla, what's up, fam? What's up, dude? And then Billy says, agrees. So Ruca seems very Charlotte-like with her size, athleticism, look, and charisma. Yeah, I think she's going to be a major star in pro wrestling going forward if she plays her cards right. And if WWE continues to get behind her. Next we go, Josh Alexander is talking with Sinner and Saint when in comes Gia Miller. Alexander says, you can't get a moment's peace anywhere in this place. Miller brings up what Alexander did to Eric Young. He says, it sounds more like a statement than a question, and tells her she's supposed to be a reporter. He then sends a message to Young ahead of their match tonight. He tells everyone to pull up a chair and watch a masterclass in him wiping the floor with the TNA legend. He tells Miller to hit the bricks and resumes his conversation with Sinner and Saint. I think they buried the lead. We now have a name with this faction. They're called the Northern Armory. And they took some action. They took some like some really cool pictures and some poses and stuff like that. So I thought they botched the heel turn for Josh. It's Slammiversary. And that's not something I'm ever going to come off on. He turned heel on Joe Hendry, and then he immediately lost. Like he beat Joe, and then he lost to Nick Nemeth. I thought that was a fail, and I'll tell you why. Josh Alexander had headlined. He was the face of this company for the last 3 years. He headlined Bound for Glory 3 years in a row, and then he turns heel, and that should have been the biggest story in the company because he was the face of the company for the last 3 years. Turns heel, beats Joe Hendry. Great. That's great. He should have went on to win the title. Okay. So they fucked that up. And then he goes on the next month, he loses to Nick Nemeth, and then he loses to Joe Hendry the following month. So now he's like a mid-card act. And we've kind of like lost faith in him as being a top guy in the company because losing in the main event of 3 pay-per-views in a row, right? Now we have no faith in this guy. So what are we going to do to get behind him? Like, why would we be interested in this character anymore? I'm just talking about the character of Josh Alexander as a heel. Why would we be interested in him anymore? What is his why? Well, now his why is passing info to the next generation and creating a stable of people around him to build himself back up. Okay, now that's interesting. Sinner and Saint, 2 young guys from Canada, as he said in the promo. He's going to bring in 2 young guys, take them under his wing, and cause havoc in the company. That is the story I can get behind. I like the name, the Northern Armory, obviously. I was thinking they'd be called the Northern Alliance. Northern Armory, even better. So I dig that. I am with this crew here, and I am with this story. As it stands right now, I'm with it. Because we have to get Josh back up into the upper echelon. Or if they're never going to get him back, at least when he's doing something in the mid-card, he'll be interesting again. Because we had lost interest in him after losing 3 pay-per-views in a row. Okay, now comes in the first WWE segment of the night. This was more WWE than the opening match, which featured 2 WWE stars. So show returns and Nick Nemeth's theme hits. And he heads to the ring, and he says, we know the main event of Bound for Glory because Joe Hendry beat Frankie Kazarian, which causes Joe Hendry to come out. And he comes out in a sport coat, and he does a full entrance routine, including the wave, and then he addresses the We Believe movement after talking about Nemeth being a champion everywhere he goes. Nemeth says, it sounds like a lot of people believe in Joe Hendry. He says they do, and Hendry is a good kid. So he keeps dropping that good kid line. I'm wondering when that's going to piss Hendry off. He says, I hope there's a mutual respect. He says, even Shawn Michaels believes in Joe Hendry. Hendry says he appreciates the kind words, and there's a lot of legends who believe in Joe Hendry, but there's one who believes in Nick Nemeth. So he asked about John Layfield. So now they're finally acknowledging John Layfield, which I like. It took them a little bit, but now they're acknowledging there's an elephant in the room, and it's JBL. Nemeth cuts him off and says he doesn't have to worry about JBL or Layfield, only man who steals the show every night for the past 20 years. He says he doesn't plan on losing his title anytime soon as they stare each other down intensely, sorry. First class theme hits, and it just kind of goes off the rails at this point. It's like, why is first class coming out? It's like, what? They have nothing to do with it. AJ Francis is upset that they're calling themselves the main event. It's like, now you're an idiot, which I guess that's the point. Like, Francis is an idiot, but it made no sense for them to come out. But and then of course he has to make fun of Nashville, calling them Trashville and Country Bumpkins, which I think Moose does the same kind of type of stuff later in the show. And then they talk about Joe Hendry's 2 songs. Anyway, this leads to a tag match. Like every WWE segment you've ever seen in your life, that's what this was. We went from getting heat between Joe Hendry and Nick Nemeth to now we have to do the same story that we're doing with Masha Slamovich. The 2 baby faces becoming a tag team, and now we're going to have to try to cause a rift with them via tag team matches, right? It's like, it's the same story. We're just doing it again. Makes no sense to me. Well, I mean, it makes sense. It's lazy, right? Okay. Then we go Ash by Elegance is in the back. So they're doing Heather Reckless's like makeover. She and George Iceman and some makeup people off camera go step by step insulting Heather's looks and dress style while talking about ideas for ways to change her and make her over. I got to admit something, and I'm not proud of it, but I did laugh when her and George Iceman start chanting Botox, 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 because my original name for her was Ash by Botox. So she's kind of embraced the fact that, yes, she's had a lot of Botox, but she seems to be proud of it. Like I guess it's part of her gimmick now. She likes Botox. And then we go to the next match. Josh Alexander defeating Eric Young. Gotta say, I watched Eric Young's show, Vinyl Obsession, on TNA Plus. So it's an Access show, but because Eric Young's a part of it, they're actually putting it on the TNA Plus app, which I think is a smart move. I don't know that it'll get a lot of traction, but I enjoyed the show because I like hearing guys like Dave Mustaine talk about like old music and like their influences. They had another guy who's like a DJ. I've never heard of the guy, but Dave Mustaine from Megadeth. And of course he was the original guitarist from Metallica, talking about some of his early influences and talking about some of his favorite albums and things like that. I thought that was a cool show. So kudos to Eric Young. And he's the host of it. He does a pretty good job. So I hope the show ends up taking off. Going to be hard to take off on Access TV, but I hope it becomes a hit for him. So it gets off to a hot start. The action spills to the floor where Young chops the hell out of Alexander. Alexander starts to take over, and as he does, they go into a commercial break. And when they return, Alexander's in control. Match continues. Young starts slowly fighting his way back into a competitive form until Sinner and Saint hit the ring, which leads to Alexander picking up the win. After the match, Alexander, Sinner, and Saint, the Northern Armory, the recapper here. Josiah, you got to talk to your fellow recapper. Tell him to learn the names of the factions. The Northern Armory beat the shit out of Eric Young. And then they cut to backstage footage where the security guards who are wearing black shirts, these are the same security guards that are coming out from Moose's segment, by the way, later in the show. But they'll be wearing system shirts. So, but they're there with Steve Macklin, who has been zip tied and he got his ass beat. So now we have a 3-on-2 deal. Looks like we're going to get a trios match at Bound for Glory with a mystery opponent or mystery partner. Now, this is one of those things that we need to clip. I need everybody to get their minds right. Get your fucking minds right. Okay? Do not think this is going to be a big deal. This is not going to be AJ Styles. This is not going to be Bobby Roode. This is not going to be anybody important. It's not going to be Abyss, Petey Williams. It's not going to be somebody from the WWE main roster. It's not going to be a significant major star. It's going to be somebody from the TNA roster. That's where you need to get your minds made up. If they announce that this is a mystery opponent or mystery partner, do not go big. Io, you are the worst offender, brother. I'm calling you out, sir. It's not going to be Monty Brown. It will not be Monty Brown. I'm telling you guys, do not think this is going to be a big deal. It's not going to be anybody important. We're going to get to the mystery, and Rhino's fat ass is going to come limping through the curtain, and it's going to be him. Or it's going to be Tummy Dreamer. Okay? Or it's going to be Bulky Ray. It's just going to be some dude. It's not going to be anybody that we're wanting to pay money to see. Don't let TNA fans fool you. Do not get whipped up into a frenzy thinking this is going to be a big deal. Don't listen to fucking Jordan Grace teasing surprises. It turns out to be Earl Hebner, and then she blames it on a fucking power outage, and it turns out that wasn't true. They had nobody. Do not get caught up in this surprise. Don't do it to yourselves. I'm trying to teach you guys here about sanity. No, I said Sanity. It's not going to be anybody from Sanity either, although I would like that. I like Sanity. I thought that was a cool act. But, okay. Io, don't get yourself in trouble, sir. I have to put him in a timeout. No, I love Io. Great dude. All right. And then backstage, we see Jordan Grace cleaned up, showered, hair braided. So more shortly after her match, looking for Masha Slamovich in various rooms. Jim Miller catches up, and Jordan asks if she's seen her. They check in another room, and it looks like a dark room, dark red lighting, tons of pictures all over the wall. Yeah, so Masha's redoing her gimmick, which I liked the gimmick. I really liked that original gimmick. So if they're going back to this, that's great. Now, but they just got Masha over as a babyface, and they're turning her heel already. At least that was a heel character, okay? So they're bringing in aspects of it. So I'm going to hold off complete judgment because I did like the Masha Psycho character. So if they're going to go full force, I don't know. We'll see. All right. And they come back from commercial. Santana makes his way to the ring through the crowd. He gets on the mic and he talked to the camera. He said he sent a message to Moose. He tells him to prove that he's the man to come out here. Moose's theme hits. And he talks about buying the best security money can buy. And then he brings out the guys that were just backstage looking over Steve Macklin, but in different t-shirts. He says Santana thinks he's a guy. He's a tough guy because he comes from the streets, but he says he's just a dumbass. Santana points out Moose's security and says, "Oh, it proves nothing, but he's a baby boy biatch." And then of course the fans start chanting "baby boy bitch." Santana says he can smell the fear from all the way up in the ring. Says at one point in life, Moose was his. He says they've lived through the same struggles. They both had to create something from nothing. The only difference is Santana still walks the same blocks he put in work on. He walks side by side with the same people he came up with. Dares Moose to step through his top flight security and prove that he's the face of the franchise. Moose questions Santana's claims that he's forgot where he comes from, but he says he didn't forget where he came from because he's made himself a 3-time champion. He did it by himself without anyone else, or without anyone. Just by trusting the system. He says he can come down there and beat the hell out of him like he's done in the past. He says he's learned when you're good at doing something, you never do it for free. He's a prize fighter, and so he makes the challenge for Bound for Glory. He says the difference between them is that he's the face of the franchise, where Santana is nothing but a poor Puerto Rican kid from the projects, which pisses Santana off. He tries to rush him. Buck stops short when he sees all the security. The rest of the system attack him from behind. They have traded their USA colors for dark gray attire. Moose joins them in the ring as they continue to stomp out Santana. ABC's theme hits, and the Ace and Bay come out, and they brawl with the system. Moose's security hits the ring, and then the Hardies come out. Thank God that they were in Skyway Studios, which I actually didn't think the show looked bad, and I thought the production quality was very good. But the stage is so close to the ring, the Hardies don't have to run as far, so that's like good for Matt. So their entrance plays, and Matt and Jeff hit the ring and fight off security and help the system brawl. And then, of course, Santino comes out. And by this point, I think this is like the third time we've seen Santino, and I'm like Santino'd out. He says that Santino says it'll be Moose versus Mike Santana at Bound for Glory. And then the Hardys versus ABC is next. So, but I thought the segment between Moose and Santana was very good. And Io agrees. He said he loves the segment between Moose and Santana. I said a long time ago that Santana's got top guy energy, and I agree. I really, really like Santana. I think they've gotten a great signing here. Next, we go to the Hardys and ABC. So, again, lazy booking. Ends in a no contest. We kind of saw it coming. They weren't going to just give away the match. It reminds me of they did the same exact thing that AEW did with Osprey and Takeshita. Now, I mean Osprey and Ricochet, where they had the match, and then that ended up having a false finish, but Takeshita came out and beat up both guys so they could set up a three-way. That's what happens here. They just didn't do the false finish. They're having a pretty good match, and the crowd was really into it. And I kind of like seeing the generational clash between the two. You could tell that Ace and Bay were very much influenced by the Hardy Boys. But the system comes out and they attack both teams after having a pretty good match. And then, of course, Santino comes out again. I'm like, God damn it, Santino. Do we have to hear his theme song every time he walks out? Dude, it is way too much Santino. Way too much Santino. And I'm not even like a Santino hater, but I'm just like too much on one show. Santino comes out and says, despite their best efforts, by the power invested in him, Edwards and Myers will face the Hardys and ABC in a full metal mayhem match for the tag titles at Bound for Glory. This is exactly what I said I didn't want them to do to Jeff. It's just like, guys, you're going to get Jeff hurt and he's going to get himself in trouble again. That doesn't mean I don't want to see the match, because I do. I just hope that the Hardys don't go crazy in the match. Like Matt Hardy doing a leg drop off a ladder, like the middle part of the ladder through a table, fine with. Jeff Hardy going all the way to the top and hitting a swanton to the floor through a table, I don't want that to happen. Like, we just got the guy back. He does this crazy shit. He beats up his body. He starts boozing and he gets himself in trouble. So I worry about that. I worry about Jeff, right? The guy's clearly got a problem. He likes to hurt himself and get all drunk and pilled up and start driving. But I do think this is going to be a great match. I really do. I know people dogging the Hardys because they're old. I love the Hardys. I think they've been doing great in TNA. I think they should bow out of the match for a little while, for most of it, hit their signature spots, don't do anything crazy. And I think the Hardys get the victory here. Although I think I would kind of like to see ABC get the victory here. Let's elevate them. Them getting a victory against the Hardys and the system, I think would really like skyrocket them. But we'll see. But if the Hardys win, maybe we can get a match between them and the Rascals, like at another pay-per-view. I think that would be pretty cool too. Laredo Kid Leon Slater defeated Laredo Kid and Jason Hotch. So he is gonna be the number one contender to the X Division champion. He's gonna face Speedball Mike Bailey here pretty soon. He won the match with his 450 senton off the ropes. The crowd went crazy for that. This was a pretty good standard X Division match, not too memorable, kind of short, but I dig it. Then Jordan Grace hits the ring, and she says you can't find Masha Slamovitz backstage. She asks her to come out here for 1 second. Masha's theme hits, and she comes. Grace brings up seeing Masha's kill wall going back up, and now she saw her face in a picture on it. Slamovitz says Grace knew that she had to keep her close. She said that she was the only one who knew she spoke English. She says she kept it to herself so she could be the center of attention. Slamovitz accepts her challenge and says she's going to become the Knockouts champion at Bound for Glory and will teach Grace what it's like to live in her shadow. Masha hands her an envelope and walks off. Grace pulls out a picture of her, which is marked with an X. So very ominous way to end that segment. And Billy has a hot take. He says, I'm sorry, this bill from Masha is weak. She was losing on TV to Jody Threat in singles matches a month ago. They had time to build her up as a killer, yet wasted her in a worthless tag division. I thought they did a good job a few weeks ago having her headline with the Hardys and get kind of shine. But then they kind of took a step back, and then here they're turning her back into the psycho killer. So we're kind of like, we don't know what she is at this point. Is she a babyface? Is she a heel? What's going on with her? All right, main event time. We got Nick Nemeth and Joe Hendry defeat First Class, or as Santino calls them, Fist Class, which I thought was pretty funny. I thought this was a pretty good match. It was very, like I said, WWE. I thought Casey Navarro specifically shined in the match. I thought he did a great job. Navarro hits a missile drop kick on Nemeth. He goes for blessing in disguise, but Nemeth countered with a super kick. Nemeth thought about the danger zone, but instead used Hendry's standing ovation finisher to take out Navarro. Nemeth follows up with a famouser for the win. Oh, so earlier in the match, Joe Hendry hit the danger zone himself. So That's what they're doing. They're hitting each other's finishers. I don't like that stuff. I think that's weak. There's still no heat for the match. We got to figure out a way to get heat. And it's just two baby faces that love each other and competing for a title. And unless the match is going to be like an epic out of this world match, nobody's going to care about that. It's very basic build, very paint by numbers, very lazily, not very creative way to build this match. Not a fan of how they're doing it. I'm just not. That doesn't mean it won't end up being good, but as of right now, not very good. Okay, let's get to the chat, and then we're going to close it out. Io says, what if Bay, Ace, Eddie, Brian do most of the spots? Yeah, of course they should. But this is, I would expect the Hardies to win the tag titles. I think they will. Billy says, Casey Navarro is excellent, and he needs to be in the X division. He can go. Yeah, I think when Rich Swann comes back, maybe KC, because I think the better tag team is Rich and AJ. Not that Casey's not a good wrestler, he is, but I just think that I think that's a better act. I mean, they can keep Casey around as kind of a lackey and then does X division matches. I think that would be fine. But right now they're just losing all the time, and Casey typically takes all the L's. So first class is as BQ calls them, they're now business class. But hey guys, that is gonna do it for me this week. I am gonna try to be on Patreon again this weekend. We'll see what topics we have. I think JD and I are gonna try to hook up tomorrow and do an overtime exclusively for the Patreon. But yeah, that is going to do it for me this week on Brace for Impact. I greatly appreciate you being subscribers. If you're seeing this on YouTube, hit the like button, make sure you comment, and make sure you're a subscriber to the channel. And of course, head to patreon.com/the Mike and JD show. That's what keeps the train rolling. That's how we're able to do all this stuff. So yep, that is going to do it for me this week. And until next time, mahalo.